You walk into a store where a handbag that cost $3,000 5 years ago now costs $9,000. Yet it is made with the exact same materials and the exact same workers are producing it in the exact same factory, but somehow the company tells you it is worth 3 times more simply because they decided it should be. That is not inflation. That is not craftsmanship appreciation. That is pure calculated greed. And the world's largest luxury company, LVMH, has been playing this game for years, raising prices on their brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Fendi by double digits annually while their actual production costs barely moved. This video will walk you through the specific ways LVMH's aggressive pricing strategy is now causing serious problems for their business. From falling sales numbers in key markets to angry customers abandoning brands they once loved, and the cultural shift that is making people question whether a handbag is really worth the price of a used car. Let us dive into the 15 reasons why LVMH's years of exploitative price increases are finally coming back to hurt them now and beyond. Reason number 15. Louis Vuitton priced out their core middle-class aspirational buyers. Louis Vuitton, the crown jewel of LVMH that generates nearly half of the entire company's fashion revenue, has systematically destroyed its relationship with middle-class customers who once saved up to buy one special piece as a milestone purchase. The brand raised prices on their classic Speedy bag from around $800 in 2015 to over $2,000 today, and their iconic Neverfull tote went from $1,000 to nearly $2,500 in the same period, increases that far exceed any measure of inflation or material cost changes. These middle-class aspirational buyers, teachers, nurses, office workers who would save for months to afford one Louis Vuitton item as a special treat have been completely pushed out of the market and replaced with a strategy targeting only the ultra-wealthy. The problem is that this middle-class segment represented millions of customers worldwide who provided steady, predictable revenue, and now they are gone, turning instead to brands that offer genuine leather quality at prices under $1,000. Louis Vuitton assumed they could just replace these customers with more ultra-rich buyers. But there are only so many billionaires in the world, and even they are starting to feel the brand has lost its appeal when everyone from influencers to celebrities has the same bag. Reason number 14. Dior's quality decline. While prices skyrocketed, created angry customers. Dior, another massive LVMH brand, committed what might be the worst sin in luxury, raising prices dramatically while simultaneously reducing quality, creating a perfect storm of customer anger and disappointment. The brand's famous Lady Dior bag now costs around $6,000, up from approximately $3,500 just 7 years ago. Yet multiple customers and luxury reviewers have documented issues with thread quality, inferior leather that scratches easily, and hardware that tarnishes within months of purchase. Independent leather experts who have examined recent Dior products note that the leather quality has noticeably decreased compared to pieces from 10 years ago, with thinner hides and less careful selection of materials, yet the prices have nearly doubled in that same time frame. This created a situation where customers who spent their hard-earned money on what they believed was a luxury investment piece found themselves with a bag that looked worn out after minimal use. And these disappointed buyers have taken to social media, YouTube reviews, and luxury forums to warn others. Dior's strategy seemed to be betting that their brand name alone would justify any price and excuse any quality issues. But that calculation badly misjudged how much information modern customers have access to and how willing they are to share negative experiences. When someone spends $6,000 on a handbag, they expect it to last decades and maintain its beauty. And Dior's failure to deliver on that basic promise while charging more than ever has severely damaged customer trust. Reason number 13. Fendi alienated loyal customers with aggressive annual price increases. Fendi, the Roman luxury house known for its iconic baguette bag and fur expertise, took the LVMH pricing playbook to an extreme that even shocked luxury industry insiders, implementing price increases of 15% to 20% annually on some of their core items between 2019 and 2023. Their classic peekaboo bag, a style beloved by professionals and fashion enthusiasts, jumped from around $4,000 to over $7,000 in just 4 years. and the brand seemed to implement these increases with no warning, no explanation, and certainly no corresponding improvement in design or quality. Longtime Fendi customers, some who had been buying from the brand for 20 or 30 years, found themselves suddenly unable to afford the very items they had built their wardrobes around, and many felt personally betrayed by a brand they had supported with loyalty and significant amounts of money. The aggressive pricing strategy was particularly painful because Fendi products are often more subtle and less logo-driven than other LVMH brands, meaning customers bought them for the craftsmanship and design rather than for status signaling. So when prices skyrocketed, these buyers felt they were being punished for their genuine appreciation of the product. Industry analysts have noted that Fendi's sales growth has notably slowed compared to other LVMH brands, suggesting that their aggressive pricing may have actually hurt revenue rather than helped it, as they lost steady customers faster than they could attract new ultra-wealthy ones. Reason number 12. The Chinese market collapsed as local consumers chose domestic brands. For years, Chinese consumers represented the largest and most important market for LVMH brands, accounting for estimates suggesting anywhere from 35 to 40% of global luxury sales. But the combination of excessive pricing and growing Chinese national pride has created a massive shift away from Western luxury brands. Chinese customers who once viewed Louis Vuitton and Dior as essential status symbols are increasingly turning to domestic luxury brands like Exception de Mixmind and Erdos, which offer comparable quality at lower prices while celebrating Chinese culture and craftsmanship. The Chinese government has also been promoting a cultural campaign encouraging citizens to support domestic products and reduce worship of Western brands, a message that resonates particularly well when Western brands are charging prices that feel exploitative and disrespectful. LVMH's sales in China dropped significantly last year and continued declining into this year, with some reports suggesting double-digit percentage decreases in certain quarters, a devastating blow for a company that had structured its entire growth strategy around Chinese market expansion. The problem for LVMH is that they cannot simply lower prices to win back Chinese customers without destroying their luxury positioning globally, so they are stuck watching one of their most important markets slip away while domestic Chinese competitors gain strength and credibility. This situation is particularly ironic because LVMH's excessive price increases in China, where they charged even more than in Europe or America, directly contributed to the nationalist backlash that is now hurting them. Reason number 11. Givenchy lost its creative direction, while raising prices beyond recognition. Once one of the most respected names in French fashion, has become a case study in how bad management combined with aggressive pricing can destroy a heritage brand's reputation in just a few years. The brand has cycled through multiple creative directors since Riccardo Tisci left in 2017, with each new designer bringing a completely different aesthetic that confused customers and destroyed any sense of brand identity. Yet through all this chaos, prices kept climbing with bags that cost $2,000 5 years ago, now priced at $4,000 or more. Customers who loved Givenchy for its elegant, slightly edgy Parisian style found themselves unable to recognize the brand anymore, with some seasons featuring streetwear-inspired designs, others going for minimalism, and still others attempting romantic femininity, none of which felt authentically Givenchy. The lack of creative consistency would be bad enough on its own, but combined with the aggressive price increases, it created a situation where customers felt they were being asked to pay luxury prices for a brand that did not even know what it wanted to be. Sales data suggests that Givenchy significantly underperforms other LVMH fashion brands, and industry insiders report that the brand is considered a problem child within the LVMH portfolio. Yet leadership continues to push prices higher rather than addressing the fundamental creative and identity issues. This approach has alienated the core customers who once loved Givenchy and ensured that new customers have no reason to choose it over more established or more exciting alternatives. Reason number 10. Celine destroyed Phoebe Philo's legacy with dramatic price increases. Celine, under creative director Phoebe Philo from 2008 to 2017, was beloved by fashion insiders and sophisticated customers for its minimalist, intellectual aesthetic and relatively reasonable prices for luxury, with bags typically ranging from $2,000 to $3,500. But after Hedi Slammin took over and completely changed the brand's direction, LVMH also dramatically increased prices while alienating the loyal customer base. Slammin Celine abandoned the understated elegance that Philo's fans loved, replacing it with a more rock and roll, logo-heavy aesthetic that felt completely disconnected from the brand's recent history. And simultaneously, prices on bags jumped to $5,000 and beyond for styles that longtime customers found unrecognizable. The situation created an unusual dynamic where vintage Phoebe Philo-era Celine pieces actually increased in value on the resale market, with customers willing to pay more for old Celine than new Celine, a devastating commentary on how badly LVMH mismanaged the brand transition. Women who had built their entire professional wardrobes around Phoebe Philo's Celine felt abandoned and even insulted by the brand's new direction and higher prices, and many of them simply stopped buying Celine entirely, turning instead to brands like the Row or Kate that continued the minimalist aesthetic Celine had abandoned. LVMH's approach to Celine demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of brand loyalty, assuming they could completely change what made customers love a brand, charge significantly more, and somehow keep those customers. Reason number 9. LVMH brands became too common due to overproduction, despite higher prices. One of the core principles of luxury is exclusivity, the idea that not everyone can have it, which makes it special and desirable. But LVMH systematically destroyed this exclusivity across multiple brands by flooding the market with products while simultaneously raising prices to absurd levels. Louis Vuitton, which once felt special and aspirational, became so ubiquitous that it lost almost all cachet among true luxury consumers, with the classic monogram canvas seen everywhere from high school hallways to grocery stores, making it impossible for the brand to maintain its luxury positioning. The same pattern repeated with other LVMH brands. Dior saddlebags became so common that fashion insiders started avoiding them. Fendi Baguettes lost their cool factor through overexposure, and even Celine became too widely distributed to feel truly exclusive. The problem for LVMH is that they wanted to have it both ways, producing and selling massive quantities to maximize revenue while charging ultra-luxury prices that should only be justified by rarity and exclusivity. This strategy worked for a while because many customers were buying for status signaling rather than genuine appreciation of craft. But as the brands became too common, they stopped providing the status benefit that justified the high prices. Now LVMH faces a difficult situation where they cannot easily reduce production without hurting revenue. But continuing high production means the brands keep losing their luxury appeal, creating a downward spiral that higher prices cannot fix and actually make worse. Reason number 8. Loro Piana faced exploitation scandals while charging outrageous prices. Loro Piana, the Italian brand famous for its luxury cashmere and wool that LVMH acquired in 2013 for over $2 billion, became the center of a major ethical scandal that exposed the dark side of luxury pricing, when investigations revealed the brand paid Peruvian indigenous communities as little as few dollars for vicuna fiber that would end up in coats selling for $20,000 or more. The vicuna fiber comes from animals that live in Peru's high-altitude regions, and the indigenous communities who have cared for these animals for generations do the difficult, skilled work of shearing them. Yet Loro Piana's compensation to these communities was low compared to the final product prices. When this story gained attention in 2022 and 2023, many luxury customers who prided themselves on buying quality over fast fashion felt deeply uncomfortable about supporting a brand that built $50,000 coat prices on the backs of exploited indigenous workers earning poverty wages. The scandal was particularly damaging because Loro Piana's entire brand identity centered on quality, natural materials, and craftsmanship, values that seemed hollow when the people actually producing the materials were treated so poorly. LVMH's response to the controversy was defensive and minimal, suggesting they saw it as a public relations problem to manage rather than a genuine ethical issue to address, which further alienated conscious consumers. The situation perfectly encapsulated how LVMH's greed extended beyond just charging customers more. It also meant paying suppliers less, squeezing maximum profit from both ends while claiming to represent the highest standards of luxury. Reason number 7. Younger generations rejected logo. Heavy status symbols for subtle quality. Generation Z and younger millennials, who represent the future of luxury consumption, have demonstrated dramatically different values around fashion and status than previous generations, preferring subtle quality over obvious logos, and this shift in values is devastating for LVMH brands built on status signaling. These younger consumers grew up with social media and have seen how hollow and performative obvious luxury can be, with influencers buying designer items specifically to photograph for Instagram while potentially struggling financially, making logo-covered bags feel desperate rather than aspirational. Instead, younger luxury consumers gravitate toward brands like Bottega Veneta with its no-logo aesthetic, the Row with its quiet sophistication, or even high-quality contemporary brands that offer better value, and they actively avoid the obvious Louis Vuitton monogram or Dior logo prints that previous generations coveted. This represents a fundamental threat to LVMH's business model because brands like Louis Vuitton generate enormous profits specifically from their logo canvas items, which are cheaper to produce than leather goods but command high prices purely because of the status signaling value. When status signaling loses its appeal to an entire generation, those products lose their justification for premium pricing. Yet LVMH has continued raising prices on exactly these logo items as if the cultural shift is not happening. The company seems to believe they can wait out this trend or that younger consumers will eventually embrace logos as they age and earn more. But early data suggests this is wishful thinking, and younger consumers with serious money are choosing other brands that align better with their values of understated quality. Reason number 6. Bulgari jewelry price increases made competition more attractive. Bulgari, the Italian jewelry and watch brand that LVMH acquired in 2011, has seen its pricing strategy backfire as aggressive increases made competing luxury jewelry brands look increasingly attractive by comparison, with signature Serpenti pieces and Bulgari collections jumping 30 to 40% in just 5 years. A Bulgari Serpenti Forever bag that cost around $2,000 in 2018 now retails for over $3,000, and their iconic Bulgari jewelry pieces have seen similar or even steeper increases, making customers question whether the brand truly offers the best value in luxury jewelry. The problem for Bulgari is that unlike fashion where trends change quickly, jewelry is an investment purchase that customers research carefully, comparing quality, design, heritage, and price across multiple brands before deciding. When customers do this research and comparison shopping, they increasingly find that brands like Cartier offer better heritage and design at comparable or even lower prices, or that smaller jewelry houses offer superior craftsmanship for less money. Bulgari's pricing strategy seemed to assume that their Roman heritage and distinctive aesthetic would justify any price, but jewelry customers are particularly sensitive to value because they view pieces as potential heirlooms or investments, not just fashion accessories. The jewelry category is also more resistant to LVMH's usual tactics of creating artificial scarcity or using marketing to inflate desirability because customers can directly compare gemstone quality, metal purity, and craftsmanship across brands, making inflated pricing more obvious and harder to justify. Reason number 5. Rimowa suitcase prices tripled after LVMH acquisition with minimal improvements. Rimowa, the German luggage brand famous for its aluminum suitcases that LVMH acquired in 2016, became one of the most blatant examples of acquisition-based price gouging when their classic cabin suitcase went from around $500 pre-acquisition to over $1,500 just 5 years later, with no meaningful improvements to justify the increase. The brand's aluminum suitcases are made using essentially the same manufacturing process and materials they used for decades, grooved aluminum formed into a lightweight case with a reliable handle and wheel system, yet LVMH marketing convinced customers this relatively simple industrial product was worth luxury fashion prices. Frequent travelers who represent Rimowa's core customer base noticed that the actual product quality did not improve proportionally with the price increases, with many reporting that newer expensive Rimowa pieces were actually less durable than older, cheaper ones, particularly regarding wheel assemblies and handle mechanisms. The price increases became particularly difficult to justify when competing brands like Away in July entered the market offering attractive functional luggage for $200 to $400, making Rimowa's $1,000 plus prices seem absurd for what is ultimately a utilitarian travel product. LVMH seemed to believe that applying luxury marketing and brand positioning to a luggage company would allow them to charge luxury prices, but luggage is fundamentally different from fashion because it needs to be genuinely functional and durable, and no amount of branding can disguise when a suitcase breaks or fails to perform. The aggressive pricing strategy has pushed practical travelers toward cheaper alternatives while only maintaining customers who care more about luggage as a status symbol than as a functional tool. Reason number 4. Economic uncertainty made customers question all luxury purchases. The global economic situation in 2023 and 2024, characterized by high inflation, rising interest rates, recession fears, and general financial uncertainty, created an environment where even wealthy customers started questioning whether luxury purchases made sense, particularly at the inflated prices LVMH brands were charging. When mortgage rates doubled, stock markets became volatile, and economists warned of potential recession, the psychology around discretionary spending changed dramatically, with luxury purchases that once felt exciting and justifiable now feeling frivolous or even irresponsible. This shift hit LVMH particularly hard because their aggressive pricing strategy had pushed many items into truly shocking price territory, with simple canvas bags costing $3,000 and basic leather wallets priced at $800, numbers that suddenly felt indefensible when customers were worried about their financial futures. The company's entire growth strategy for the previous decade had been built on the assumption that there would always be enough wealthy people willing to spend unlimited amounts on luxury goods, regardless of economic conditions. But 2023 and 2024 data proved this assumption wrong. Even high-net-worth individuals started pulling back on luxury spending, not because they could not afford it, but because the cultural mood had shifted and conspicuous consumption felt tone-deaf when so many people were struggling financially. LVMH executives seemed genuinely surprised by this pullback, suggesting they had lost touch with how their customers actually think and make purchasing decisions, assuming brand desire would always overcome price resistance regardless of external circumstances. Reason number 3. Resale market collapsed for LVMH brands showing true value. The secondary market for luxury goods, platforms like Fashionphile, Vestiaire Collective, and The Real, provided an unintentional but devastating reality check on LVMH brand value when resale prices collapsed dramatically in 2023 and 2024, revealing that items purchased for $3,000 to $5,000 new were worth only $1,000 to $1,500 within a year. This collapse in resale value destroyed the narrative that LVMH brands were investment pieces that held value over time, a key justification many customers used to rationalize spending thousands on a handbag. The resale data was particularly brutal for Louis Vuitton canvas items, which lost 60 to 70% of their retail value almost immediately, and even leather goods from brands like Dior and Fendi showed depreciation rates more typical of electronics than luxury goods. Customers who bought into the investment piece narrative felt betrayed when they tried to resell items and discovered the market value was a fraction of what they paid, making it clear that LVMH's retail prices were artificially inflated far beyond any reasonable measure of actual value. The resale market essentially functioned as a crowdsourced valuation system that cut through brand marketing and prestige pricing to reveal what informed buyers actually believed products were worth. And the answer for most LVMH brands was significantly less than retail prices. This information spread quickly through social media and luxury communities, making it increasingly difficult for LVMH to justify their prices when customers knew items would lose most of their value the moment they left the store. Reason number 2. Tag Heuer and Hublot lost credibility among serious watch collectors. In the watch category, LVMH brands. Tag Heuer and Hublot faced credibility crises among serious collectors and enthusiasts who view them as overpriced fashion watches rather than serious timepieces, particularly damaging when their prices have increased to levels where they compete with genuinely respected watch brands. Tag Heuer, once considered a good entry point into Swiss watches at around $2,000, now charges $5,000 to $8,000 for standard models, yet serious watch collectors still consider them significantly inferior to brands like Omega, Tudor, that cost similar amounts. The problem for Tag Heuer is that price increases did not come with movements, finishing, or heritage improvements that would justify the higher positioning, so they ended up trapped in an awkward middle ground, too expensive for casual buyers, but not respected enough for serious collectors. Hublot faced even harsher criticism from the watch community, with many collectors viewing the brand as the ultimate example of marketing over substance, charging $50,000 to $100,000 or more for watches with relatively basic movements, inside flashy cases covered in the brand's logo. Watch collecting is a particularly knowledgeable and vocal community, where mechanical sophistication, finishing quality, and heritage matter enormously, and both Tag Heuer and Hublot are widely seen as lacking in these areas despite their high prices. LVMH's strategy of applying fashion brand pricing logic to watches fundamentally misunderstood that watch customers care deeply about what is inside the product, not just the brand name on the dial, and no amount of marketing can convince serious collectors that these brands deserve their current prices. Reason number 1. The fundamental disconnect between price and value became impossible to ignore. The ultimate reason LVMH's greed is backfiring is that they pushed prices so far beyond any reasonable relationship to production costs, material quality, or real value that even customers predisposed to love. Luxury brands could no longer justify the purchases, creating a fundamental crisis of value that threatens the entire business model. When a simple coated canvas bag that costs perhaps $200 to manufacture, including materials, labor, and overhead, sells for $3,000, the $2,500 difference is pure brand tax, and customers have become increasingly aware and resentful of this calculation. LVMH seemed to believe that luxury customers would never question prices or do value calculations, assuming brand desire and status signaling would always override rational economic thinking, but they badly underestimated how much information customers now have access to and how willing they are to share it. Social media, YouTube reviews, forums, and luxury communities have made it impossible to hide when quality declines, when production costs are low compared to retail prices, or when a brand is clearly prioritizing profit over customer value. The subsequent economic uncertainty also changed customer psychology, with many people reassessing their priorities and questioning whether a handbag is really worth the same as a month's rent or a vacation. LVMH's response to declining sales has been to double down on price increases and exclusivity, rather than addressing the fundamental value problem, suggesting leadership truly believes they can market and position their way out of a situation that requires actually delivering better value to customers. This disconnect between LVMH's strategy and market reality is why their greed is finally backfiring. After years of exploitative price increases, customers are simply saying enough and voting with their wallets. So there you have it. 15 concrete documented reasons why LVMH's aggressive pricing strategy and corporate greed are now causing serious problems for the world's largest luxury company and its portfolio of famous brands. From alienating core customers with prices that tripled while quality declined, to losing entire markets like China, where nationalist sentiment turned against Western luxury, to facing a generational shift where young consumers reject the logo-heavy status symbols that drive LVMH profits. The company is dealing with multiple simultaneous threats that all stem from the same root cause. They got too greedy and pushed too far. The luxury industry has always involved significant markups and brand premiums. That is part of how luxury works. But LVMH crossed a line from premium pricing into pure exploitation, raising prices year after year at rates that far exceeded inflation or any measure of value improvement, purely because they believed customers would pay whatever they charged. For a while, this strategy worked brilliantly for shareholders and executives, with LVMH stock reaching record highs and Bernard Arnault briefly becoming the world's richest person. But now, the fundamental problems with this approach are becoming impossible to ignore. When your core customers feel exploited rather than valued, when your products lose prestige because they become too common despite high prices, When younger generations reject your entire value proposition, and when economic uncertainty makes people question all discretionary spending, you have created a perfect storm that threatens long-term business sustainability. The most concerning aspect for LVMH is that many of these problems cannot be fixed quickly or easily. You cannot just lower prices without destroying the luxury positioning that justifies the entire business model. You cannot suddenly improve quality without admitting previous quality was inadequate, and you cannot regain customer trust after years of price increases that felt exploitative. What happens next will be fascinating to watch. Will LVMH adjust their strategy and actually deliver better value to customers, or will they continue raising prices and hoping their brand power is sufficient to maintain sales regardless of customer sentiment? Based on their responses so far, which have focused on marketing, exclusivity, and blaming external factors rather than acknowledging their own role in creating these problems, it seems likely they will continue down the same path until the financial results become impossible to ignore. If you found this deep dive into LVMH's pricing problems interesting and valuable, please hit that like button to help this video reach more people who care about luxury fashion and business strategy. Drop a comment below telling us which LVMH brand you think has the worst price-to-value ratio. Or share your own experiences with luxury price increases that made you reconsider your purchases. Thank you for watching.